they can't keep up because there's so much misrepresentation. AI needs to jump into that.
AI for deepfakes is ultimately about, for me, it comes down to marketing.
Because we can't trust what the source of information is. This sort of goes back to what Andy was talking about. Anybody could say anything.
One of the issues we have is that this is a state-by-state issue, which puts a lot of pressure on the end viewer.
And the real challenge is if you do it well, when you lead the horse to water, you will never convince the horse that it wasn't their choice to go to the water.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is Thursday, June 28th, 2024, and you're watching the Daily AI Show live. And today we are going to be talking about the state of AI deepfakes, not a state as in the state in the United States, but we're going to be talking about the implications of not only the 2024 U.S. election, of which there was a debate last night, but also there's parliamentary and elections coming up on July 4th, so next week, next Thursday, in the UK, and there's apparently, from what I understand, a bit of a shake-up there after almost a decade and a half of power and so on and so forth. So, look, I think let me tell you who we have here first. We have Jyunmi, Beth, Eran, Andy, and I'm Brian. And I think we just I want to start off here by saying that we're not looking to have a political conversation. There was a debate last night. There's obviously a lot of opinions on both sides. I think what we saw was, what we saw, because this was planned beforehand, was, look, regardless of where you fall and whether you're in the United States or you're in the UK or Australia, to get Eran's perspective on this, it's clear that deepfakes are going to be a continued growing concern over, I don't know, the next decades, whatever it is, right? It's not going to go away. So is it going to be a whack-a-mole? Is it going to be we're always going to be in a fight situation where we come up with new technologies? Andy, you had shared one that I'm sure you want to talk about in our Slack channel, which will come up, about new technologies to fight against this and identify it, only to, see new technologies come out that can pass those sensors and so on and so forth. So today's conversation really is about that, the rising sophistication of them, how quickly they're able to spread, because the article that I read about the UK called them cheap fakes. I haven't heard that before. The idea that you could do AV type deep fakes, but you could do it on the cheap on your phone. Have you guys heard that term before? Cheap fakes? No, I don't know. I didn't know if it was a UK term, to be honest with you, but I read it. I said, oh, I get it. They're basically saying you no longer need Adobe tools. You don't need expensive stuff to do it. You can do it on the cheap and actually make a pretty big impact. So the idea of accessibility and spread, the idea of misinformation for upcoming elections. What laws are out there right now? There's several states, the United States, have laws that ban deepfakes 90 days out and varying degrees, but it's state by state. So we'll get into the laws and everything else and what the future looks like. So that sets the sort of the pace and the tone. But for now, I'd love to just kind of kick it off. Eran, you don't always get to join us, so maybe I'll kick it off to you first. And obviously, as being the only one today in the show that's from outside the United States, what's your impression of deepfakes? Has it come up in the news a lot in Australia? How are they dealing? How is Australia dealing with it, or the individual states? And is it provinces in Australia? I should know. What's the areas called? Not states, or?
So sorry, I'm not quite sure of that question. So,
like the area, like Perth is in what larger area of Australia?
Oh, okay. So we have states, and then we have, I can't remember the terminology, but we have sort of subdivisions within states.
Okay.
If I had to guess, a little bit like US counties, maybe not. I'm not sure.
Okay.
No. But the first thing I'll say is I actually watched the debate today. So it was 9 a.m. my time. So I've got a strong interest in politics, so I watched that. Mostly cringed watching it, but anyway. But the whole thing about deepfakes, I honestly haven't heard a lot about it in Australia, but I can guarantee you it's probably already happening, and if it isn't happening at a major point, it's probably going to get significant, because at the end of the day, it comes down to people. I mean, I use probably the most well-known, video cloning tool, which is HeyGen. They have made it harder to do a deep fake now than they did when they first started using it. But for $30 a month US, you can create a clone of at least yourself. And if you're probably a bit smart with the technology, you might get away with doing it full clone of somebody else. So it's not that expensive to do something like this. So my perspective is that it's only going to get worse. And I strongly think that if we, as countries at least, don't make some really strong laws, it's just going to get crazy and out of control. And then the other problem we've got is even if you have laws, let's be honest, guys, it's illegal to murder people, but they still do it. So, it's a tricky one. I don't actually have the answers. I understand the technology. I haven't seen much of it in Australia. I know it's happened. I've heard about it happening in the US. I'm expecting to see a lot more in the US, particularly with the election rolling around. The UK doesn't really have a lot of time left to deal with it. So if it's happened, it's probably already happened. Only 5 days away. But the US election is not until, November or December? I can't remember now.
Early November.
November. I can guarantee you there's going to be a lot more stuff happening. We will see some more significant things going on. It's like kind of my starting point of view on the whole subject, I guess.
So deepfake technology has definitely increased over time. I do think that one of the things that we want to roll into this conversation as well is deep influence technology. So when we talk about deepfake, we're talking about the ability of AI to generate a likeness of me saying something that I have not said, right? And in terms of the elections, a likeness of someone who's running for office or who represents someone from running for office, right? But the combination of that with the ability to identify particular characteristics and create a targeted message, what's called micro-targeting, was talked about a lot in the 2016 U.S. election. Those two things make things terrifying for me because we don't like to admit we're being manipulated, right? So as deepfake technology gets better and you can't see the fakeness of it, while that's happening, the other thing that is happening is that AI's ability to influence and manipulate is also increasing. And there is a paper that came out in March 2024 on conversational persuasiveness of large language models, a randomized controlled trial. So if people are interested in this, definitely go and look at that paper. They found that there was an 80% increase in persuasiveness in humans who were engaging in a conversation with GPT-4. 4.0 had not come out yet. Conversations with GPT-4, they did not know. Obviously, it's randomized. When GPT had basic information, like your age, where you lived, right, your education.
And so I think what you're saying, Beth, or at least what I'm understanding from you is like your concern is, yes, we have the technology, but because of AI's ability to dial in, it's not just broad deepfakes. That's something that we could assume like a Snoops, which has been around forever, that website, can go and say, that's a deepfake. We've already figured it out. And that can get shared very quickly. But if I understand you right, Beth, and I think I do, which is that how do you combat that? A Snoops or any other agency out there that's trying to do the right thing and protect truths and stuff like that in elections or otherwise, if Beth's version is slightly different than my version and it's slightly different than Andy's version, like there's not one deep fake, there's 1,000 deep fakes, and they're all specifically tuned because they're getting so cheap to do. To your point, Eran, what would it really take for me to, maybe I can't get down to the human level, but just on Facebook data of what would exist in a Facebook data to do ads, you could easily, to your point, Beth, get very, very localized. And then you could basically create what would be lookalike ads, except it would be lookalike fakes, which is to say, hey, we think this fake is going to speak directly to people in this maybe county or maybe a little larger than that, a swath of, I live in Florida, so maybe Central Florida where I live. which is a larger area, but maybe they feel that, they can reach me and say it a certain way or whatever. So do I understand that right though, Beth? Like it's more of that, the fear here is not only the deepfake, the fear is the volume and the efficiency at which they can create that.
Right.
Yeah.
And what they can do in terms of persuasiveness, right? Sam Altman came out again many, many months ago, but one of his quotes from one of his interviews was like, "Wow, I just experienced an unexpected threshold or an unexpected increase in AI's ability to convince, right? To be just in that manipulative kind of way." And if you think about it, if I'm trying to convince you of something, if I'm having a conversation with you and I'm trying to convince you of something, I have a reason for that. I'm not a blank slate, totally focused on what I need to say to you in order to get you to agree with me. I have my own stuff that I'm bringing to the conversation. AI does not. AI has one simple objective, and it can have that simple objective with tons of information across thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands conversations at the same time.
So what you're pointing to, Beth, is changes to the semantic persuasive language that will be, touching on factors in my own interpretation. Like if you're generating this using AI to try to persuade me, well, it's studied me and it knows that I find appealing, or probabilistically I would find appealing this concept or this angle of argument. Now that's very nuanced. That's very subtle differentiation for humans, but we have a much larger problem, which is generally misleading statements that are put out there that are not grounded in any kind of truth. So I'll use an example from the debate last night. Like Trump repeated a couple of times that every legal scholar in the world and all the people who are smart lawyers from every country wanted me to make the Roe versus Wade decision go back to the states. Well, that's not founded anywhere. And so you have this process of misrepresentation happening not just with AI deepfakes, but with other, influential people, like people in positions of authority and power can say things that are flatly spun in such a way that they're they're challengeable, let's say. But one of the things that was very interesting was that the structure of the debate last night, which I'm sure many of our listeners watched, did not include any real-time pushback by the moderators for any kind of assertion. So it's possible with social media, with any kind of media now in our day and age, to make any kind of assertion, bald and false though it may be. So what this brings me to is there has to be application of AI to real-time fact-checking, or at least flagging, so that, it doesn't take the moderators interrupting, but on my own screen as I'm watching something, it's flagging saying, this doesn't match with Perplexity's knowledge of everything that's ever been said by legal scholars, right? So, and the speed of response is really essential here. So anyway, I'm not as much worried about people creating a indiscernible fake of me saying something that I didn't say, as I am that it doesn't matter, because there are going to be live people throwing BS out there also in ways that seem to be authoritative and true. So I want AI not only to be able to detect deep fakes, but also to challenge misrepresentations by real humans who now, even at the highest levels of our political structures, seem willing to misrepresent. On that subject, there is this article that Brian mentioned, a research paper that just came out from Drexel University about a tool that is significantly better at detecting video deepfakes than any of the prior tools. So I'll just read very quickly, what the announcement basically says, that they developed this thing called missile, for the first four letters of misleading, right? MissileNet. And it learns using a method called constrained neural network. And it differentiates between normal and unusual values at the sub-pixel level of images or video clips. And the TLDR of it is that it correctly identified AI-generated videos 98.3% of the time, outclassing 8 other systems that scored at least 93%, or at most 93%. Mm-hmm. So better detection, but we need it to happen when presented. We need to have not just detection of manipulation of video, but of misrepresentation in the video. There's a whole class of people on TikTok, by the way, that are challenging influencers, are trying to peddle things and misrepresenting science. And they can't keep up because there's so much misrepresentation. AI needs to jump into that.
Well, in that article you were referencing that you had shared, one of the things they pointed out to the technology side of it is it's one thing if a video has been manipulated, a real video that has been manipulated with AI. Something was inserted. There was issues about a week or two ago with one of our politicians with, the video being manipulated to show somebody sort of freezing in place or otherwise, right? So we've seen this. And so that takes one side of technology, but that's a bit easier because there's artifacts, as it was explaining, because it's basically chopping it down to every frame in the second. So what it was, Jyunmi, HD is 60 frames per second. So it was literally looking at those 60 frames, individual images, and looking at them side to side and going, oh, there's artifacts, there's a difference here, something has been manipulated. But what I found interesting in that article is what I'm trying to say is that the trick was, but what if it's Sora? What if the entire thing is so lifelike and real-like, but it's not a manipulated video, it's 100% pure AI generated? Now, how do you go frame by frame? You can't. That no longer works because there's no artifacts from pixel to pixel to compare and contrast against. So there has to come up with another technology. And that's why I was referencing earlier about the whole whack-a-mole. This works now and it's 98%, but then does the next bad actor come out with the next way to get around that? I think we've seen this pretty consistently. And so, Eran, you were about to jump in here, but I'll just throw it out there as a comment. Like, doesn't it really, it's in our comments as well. Jennifer and Jen and Justin are all talking about this in the comments about the idea of, like, is the answer more literacy? Is the answer more, discussions and openness about that? Or is that just drawing more people to do it? But I think my answer is, if you only think you can look at a picture of the Pope in a fur coat and go, that's fake. Like we saw like a couple of months ago with Midjourney, and go, that's totally fake. And you think that's as far as it can go. Shouldn't there be more education about how far to show people a totally realistic cloned fake voice? And maybe we need to do this with people who have passed. Maybe we need to do this with I don't know about political figures, but maybe it's with a JFK, or if it's with somebody in the past to say, this looks 1,000%, and maybe it doesn't have an impact today on the election, but if we were back then, this would be an issue. But it's tricky, right? So anyway, I just bring that up. But go ahead, Eran, because I know you had another comment here.
So, look, I think obviously the largest part of using AI for deepfakes is ultimately about, for me, it comes down to marketing. It's really about persuasion or getting people into a certain frame of mind. And a lot of people don't think of it that way. But, marketing at it in its nicest sense is about persuading, but at its worst sense, it's about doing some really bad stuff. So we've got a bit of an issue there. I think Beth raised a good point about the idea that AI could literally target every single individual if it can get some information on them. And there's a bucket of stuff that we all put on social media. You wouldn't have to try too hard to know what I was interested in and what I talked about and all that sort of stuff to appeal to my personality, and it would be the same for all of us. So the technology is there. Marketers, as a general, we're doing a blast to everybody, And then if you get a little bit more sophisticated, you start to narrow down to smaller groups. So you might say, okay, well, this messaging is targeted at females ages 40 to 60, for example. This one's targeted at males 35 to 40 or whatever. That sort of stuff is pretty normal in the marketing space, but AI does allow us to go really deep if they can get the info. I don't remember where I heard this, but I'm sure it was really recently, and it may have been Australia. There was somebody who got scammed out of a lot of money from some business deal that was basically negotiated and discussed over a Zoom call. But the problem was all the people on the other end of the Zoom call were AI and fake. And this person did not know that that was happening, and they sent a whole pile of money to somewhere, and that was it, done and dusted. So it's definitely going to be a major issue. How we deal with it is the hardest part. I've seen HeyGen, for example, you may not have noticed, but I notice when I look at my HeyGen videos, there's a funny little small pulsing colored circle in the bottom right-hand corner that I've started to realize that's one indicator. But at the end of the day, somebody who wants to do bad is not going to let something like that stop. So I think Andy nailed it with we need instant fact checking really quickly. That's going to be important. But then what happens to people who don't believe facts? And we all know somebody who, when presented with all the proof in the world, flat earthers, classic example. How do you fact check for someone who won't believe facts? So
I think
all
Beth, you were talking about this, about like we all want to believe what we believe. It's hard to change our opinion. And so I'll just give an analogy of this. I ran LinkedIn strategy for years through Scaled before I got more into the AI side of things. But I still do that for legacy clients that I'm still running LinkedIn strategy for. The reason I bring up LinkedIn is it's a social media platform like any else. And I would inevitably over the years have people say, boo-hoo, LinkedIn is not like it used to be before. Now I just get insert thing. It could be negativity. Now I just get political. Now I get religious into my feed. And I would always say to them, every single time that happened, I'd say, hold up a mirror. Because the only reason it's in your feed is because you are clicking on it, commenting on it, or otherwise. LinkedIn does not care. They only want to feed you back because they're a social feed, like any other of the platforms, Facebook, any of them, where they're trying to fill your feed, TikTok, with things that they think you're going to interact and like. And if you click on polls that have to do about elections, guess what? LinkedIn's got more for you. And so my feed doesn't look like your feed. So I would always say, like, that's interesting. My feed doesn't look like that. My feed is relatively positive. Now, I'm not putting myself up on a pedestal. I have my own issues in ways that LinkedIn, I'm sure, is trying to drive in. But case in point, right, Beth? Like, I mean, and Eran, what you're saying is, like, we already see this in social media all the time. This is just the next leap once we cross over this uncanny valley, which, Jyunmi, I'd love to get your opinion on this because we were just talking about this yesterday. We didn't bring it up on the news show, but Synthesia came out with their 2.0, and Jyunmi and I were talking about it before we went live. And I was like, I don't know, Jyunmi, it's not really doing it for me. And they're talking like this is some new thing, and it wasn't at a HeyGen level, blah, blah, blah. And so right now we have this uncanny valley where it's like, it's getting so close to human that's where that valley is, where people, it's okay if it looks more cartoonish. It's fine if it looks 1,000% lifelike, but in that in between, right before it gets to lifelike, is that valley. And that's where people pick up on it really, really easily. So I don't know, Jyunmi, if you want to jump in on that, because we were just talking about this yesterday. And once we get past that, though.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I think that's where this emerging versions of AI are coming out, these AI technologies, is to be able to jump past that uncanny valley, right? Because once you're past that, then people are going to have a really hard time telling the difference. Even if they're aware that this technology exists, they're aware that they're being shown something that's completely AI generated, but it still looks really good, or it still looks really real, right? And so I think this goes back to sort of what Beth and Andy were talking about, is the damage or the message that AI could be used to tell is it's very broad. I mean, it can hit on a very personal level. It can hit on, on broad strokes. Every single level of society and individual can be targeted for, whatever purpose, whatever, they want to be convinced of. But I think what has always been a problem with propaganda and psyops and, just the general approach of manipulation of information, which has, happened forever in whatever, format. I even was reading an article this morning where they had an example of even George Washington had to deal with a set of letters that, that took a jab at him, and he had to counter those. And that's, that's the birth of the United States. So it's not a new issue. It's just that it's, like you said, Brian, cheap, fast, anyone can do it now. And so that becomes a larger issue to deal with, right? But what the one of the points that was brought up is because especially over the last 10 years or so, we have this lack of trust, right? Because we can't trust what the source of information is. And this sort of goes back to what Andy was talking about. Anybody could say anything, right? Mm-hmm. So you need some need to verify that on the fly, because just, anyone could say anything and you can just claim that, those are lies against you. And so I guess my point really comes down to the evolution of these technologies and what we have to do to adapt to it, right? It's a constant race. And so I agree with Andy that you do need some sort of monitoring. If AI is the problem, AI might be the solution, right? Creating a way to combat itself. And I think even Jen said something about AI fighting AI. It's true. You have to use the technology or the tools that you have to recognize and combat the bad actors using the same technologies and tools, right? So I think that's the overall main point. But I want to also highlight that the largest problem may not be the fantastical things that you're going to see out there, or the really wide accusations, or the really wide statements, and the wild things that might come out. It's the things that sound sort of true, right? It's the half truths. It's the drop of truth in whatever that overall statement is. And those are the hardest to determine and filter out, because yes, this is technically true. They didn't technically say this thing, or they technically skirted the issue. And it's those that we have to be the most wary of. And I think that's going to be the larger issue overall, is to not just determine if something is fake, but to determine how fake something is, right?
Solid.
And that's going to be the hardest thing. So I am hoping that this, AI accord that these big tech companies are coming together, where they made promises to work with each other and share information so that AI generated material can be identified and filtered and all of those kinds of things. And these are all the big players, of course. But I hope there's something good that comes out of that, right? And, we've seen dozens of states put through bills, trying to regulate AI information and things like that. So I think there is concerted effort moving in the right direction. As with all things in society, it's slower than the technology. So, right. So this particular year's election is going to be, you've got to be really, really careful, right? And everything that's coming out right now. I'm hoping that in the following years we'll have caught up, but this year will be spicy.
And I just want to touch on the states, but then I know Eran and Beth, you guys have some other things you want to bring up as well. But just on that states, when you're talking about sort of that lagging, laws coming out and stuff. Right now, at least in the United States, one of the issues we have is that this is a state-by-state issue, which puts a lot of pressure on the end viewer to keep up, which is almost impossible. I couldn't possibly tell you the differences between Florida and Georgia to my north to tell you what the differences is in the laws and policies. Does Georgia have a 90-day policy before elections and Florida doesn't? If I'm being served an ad or something like that, that could be a deep fake. You know what I mean? It's like, it's very difficult to do. And also, I want to just point out that this is bipartisan. This is on both sides of the spectrum. So it doesn't really matter what your political beliefs are, at least in the United States. This is on both sides. And you even see red states and blue states both having laws on this. I mean, people probably aren't surprised to hear that California put out laws that were in like 2019 and 2022. But so did Texas. And so did many, many other states. And now there's only like maybe 14 or 15 states out of 50 that really truly have some sound laws, and they're probably already behind because a lot of it deals with technology, to your point, Jyunmi, that was maybe up and coming and we could see, but not maybe necessarily full AI deepfakes, or Eran, your point about not video, but audio, if you want to talk about that really quick.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the conversation so far has been, and certainly I led with it, has been around video deepfake, because that's in theory, the most convincing option, because you can see the person, hear their voice, that kind of stuff. But I think it's important we don't forget that just voice alone is fairly easy to copy, and it can cause a lot of damage. You can get, and I've seen the technology, it's dirt cheap. You can do phone call blasts to 100 or 1,000 people at once with some kind of voice deepfake system, talking to someone on the other end of a phone call, and saying something that might get the person on the other end to do something that they wouldn't normally do. So the voice thing is going to be equally as significant, and I can guarantee you at some stage we will see, and it will come from probably both the red and the blue states, but we will see people come out with AI voice fakes of Donald Trump saying something bad, and we'll see people come in with AI voice fakes of Joe Biden saying something bad about each other. So don't forget about the voice, because I think that's quite often, I think that's actually the easier one to manipulate and to use, technologically speaking.
Absolutely. And there was a voice issue in the primary, I believe in New Hampshire. There was a robocall that used Biden's voice telling Democrats, registered Democrats, that they needed to save their vote, not use it in the primary and use it in the general election, right? And that is batshit, right? Like, that's not how this works. You get one for each election, like elections. But that got a bunch of play. What I want to say is what I think is wrong with the framing of the conversation, while also being part of, like, yes, this is a conversation we need to have 100%. Let's put it out that way. I'm going to give an analogy that most people are familiar with. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? So what we're talking about this in context is you can lead a horse to fake water, right? Is the water fake? Is it potable? Is it all of that? What is underneath that, and the real challenge, is if you do it well, when you lead the horse to water, you will never convince the horse that it wasn't their choice to go to the water. As long as we're talking about, is the horse drinking? Is the horse not drinking? Is the water real? Is the water not real? The big influence here is that once the horse is at the water and you walked them that way, they believe that was their choice, and now their behavior starts to stack on that. That's the challenge of super influential AI.
Scary. Listen, these are the things, like we say in our newsletter, these are things that keep us up at night, right?
I have an angle on this that I wanted to throw in there, which is there's a responsibility on the part of a civic population to be well informed, but it's almost impossible to be well informed on the vast array of subjects that are at issue, and so it's not possible for me to when a politician or someone else makes an assertion, whether it's fake or a real politician saying it, to say in my own mind, well, is that true? I have a tendency to just accept that as a premise in the argument. And I'm guilty of this all the time when I'm in an argument. I'll throw something out there that I'm not absolutely certain of. It's my sort of fake facts, if you will, and I'll throw it out there to try to persuade. But there isn't a possibility because there's not broad enough sweep of knowledge of all the facts that are out there, and it's gotten untenable to really challenge those, with the exception of the fact that AI frontier models have been trained on almost everything, and they have reasoning capabilities, and the future AGI and beyond that superintelligence will be able to instantly present a balanced presentation of what all of the influencing facts and opinions are, and digest them. And we use this right now in summarization on large articles or whatever. So the only hope I have for getting us out of the quandary that we're in is the development of really capable frontier models that can, in real time, provide a more balanced view. And I just hope that there won't be favored frontier models that have been tuned to be on the right side of the political spectrum and favorite models that are tuned to be on the left side of the political spectrum. I hope that AI, by regulation, is allowed to have, access to all the information and can present it in a balanced way. If it doesn't, if it's presenting bias, there ought to be other AIs that are saying, wait, just know that this presentation by that AI that's giving you lots of facts and information is not presenting the full picture.
But Sam has talked about this. Sam almost talked about this in an interview. And it was before 4.0 came out. I think we already had 4, and it may have been referencing 5 or one of the further advances in the models. And he said it is likely that the models will be personalized. And I think that's part of what the memory in ChatGPT OpenAI is right now, right? That what you are going to get is a personalized AI that is informed about what your core beliefs are, what you're interested in. I'm not sure that the balanced AI is a place where at least the dominant players are going.
I don't see people that are wildly off to one side or the other are going to even accept something like that. I mean, you could easily say, give the facts to somebody, whether they're on the left or the right. Their own perspective is going to guide how they view it. I can't imagine them being given a balanced and middle-of-the-line AI they'll actually listen to. I wish I was wrong, but I can't see it.
Because balance doesn't feel balanced if you have a position that benefits you, right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's lots of studies about that. That we all sort of think we're more balanced. We're like, we're sort of middle of the road. I'm kind of like everybody else. Actually, I don't think I'm like everybody else, but but
You're much
the
better
idea, no. The idea that we have a sense of what we look like outside of our box when all we can see is inside our box is a misperception.
And I agree with that. I mean, talk about this probably should be moved into. We already had it keeping us awake at night. I feel like we need to add this to the newsletter this week. This is dead on. But anyway, what I was going to say is just one quick point here, because we haven't touched on this. But when you think about the erosion of trust that comes along with this, don't forget it could actually be used on the, I would say for good, but it's only for good if you're the person using it. What I mean is in both politics or outside of that, how easy, if everybody believes that everything might be fake and manipulated by AI, how easy is it to sway people that things that are in fact real are also fake and made by AI. And that anybody can do that. It's very easy to say, that's not real. that didn't happen. I didn't say that. That's not. You guys know that can all look. We all know this all could be fake. That's fake. Yeah. Wasn't me. I didn't do it. That's people just trying to bring me down, and that can happen on the will, and it is happening on both sides of the political spectrum. So, the other side, the other scary side of this is not only do we have to worry about deepfakes, we have to worry about what happens when there's such an erosion of trust that nobody knows what they're looking at anymore, and now it becomes very easy for people to be even more manipulative and say, "Hey, you know me. I would never say that. It's clearly fake." Or I would never do that. It's clearly fake. I would never say such things. We know this technology exists. How easy is it? Somebody could have done this on their phone in the last 30 seconds. I mean, you can just turn it around immediately and make it work to your advantage. So there's that side of it too, which doesn't help with the erosion of trust either. So look, we're not going to solve it on this show. I know that much. But it's something we're talking about often, and keep bringing it up because it's going to keep happening. We're going to see new technologies that blow us away. All 5 of us on this show live and breathe AI. I mean, we talk about it all the time and stuff. And there's not a doubt in my mind that one or all 5 of us could be swayed by something in AI. And to your point, Jimmy, I think it won't be the big swings. It'll be the little teeny tiny swings that are real, real close. And you think, I don't know which way that one's going. And it could easily affect any of us. So we're certainly not immune from it, but I think one of the things we can obviously do is keep talking about it. So we'll make sure we keep doing that on this show. Hey, thanks to Jen and Jude, Jennifer, Jude, Jen. We had more people in here too.
Justin, great.
Thank you.
Wow, our feed is completely full of J names. All right, awesome.
We love that.
Go J name, folks. Yeah.
And as I was saying yesterday, also, it's cool because I now have to scroll fast to catch everybody's name, which just means you guys are in there and having great conversations. So that's kind of cool. So yes, I'm glad. Thank you. I didn't want to miss anybody's name in there, but thank you for all the great comments. Thank you for everybody who's hanging out with us live. Don't forget, you can go to thedailyasshow.com. I mentioned the newsletter several times during this show, but yeah, if you want to get more, if you're like, these people are so amazing that I would like to hear more of their thoughts on this. Hey, that's what the newsletter is for. We take different approaches, different cuts on these topics, as well as brand new ones that we haven't brought up on the shows at all. Believe it or not, even though we do this 5 days a week, we can't get it all into the live shows. So the newsletter is one of our ways to have an additional outlet. If you're interested in finding out more about that, just go to thedailyasshow.com and you'll see it right there. You can sign up for it. It's super easy. No interest in spamming anybody or anything like that. You'll just get one newsletter every Sunday morning, and hopefully you find it really valuable. So that's it. We'll wrap it up for this week. Thanks to everybody who came and hung out on the conversations all week long. Thanks to everybody from our crew who came out and added to all the conversations. And we will be back next week. It is 4th of July next Thursday in the States, which is a holiday, but we will have shows Monday through Friday. So come back and hang out with us. If you're around or you have some time off, we'd love to have you in with our live crew as well. All right. Until then, guys, we'll see you on Monday. Bye.
Aloha.